You know the phrase, never judge a book by its cover? Well, let me tell you a story. Sony has recently released their PlayStation Premium service, and it is supposed to be their competitor to Xbox Game Pass. And on the surface, you can make a case that the PlayStation Premium is a better deal than Game Pass. I mean, why wouldn't you? You have nearly double the amount of games. For over the course of a year, you'll spend about $100 less. So on the surface, on the cover, you sit there and think, well, it's a better deal to Game Pass, minus the exception of not getting day one games. But then you actually read the book. You go through it and you read it. And then you come to the realization that Sony's service is only really good to a very specific type of person. You see, Game Pass, regardless if you're new to Xbox ecosystem, you skipped out on a specific console generation of Xbox, or you've been with the brand from the very beginning, there is something for you. And that something is day one games, because everybody likes getting a day one game thrown onto the service, and you just go on about your business, play the game, not spend any extra money. The PlayStation service, no secret, does not do day one games, at least AAA ones. And right away, that obviously loses that appeal, that needle mover, if you will. You know, Xbox got 25 million subscribers because of day one games, and that moves the needle, which is also in part why Game Pass has gotten flack for 2022 because of the lack of major heavy hitters for the service coming day one. But with PlayStation, it's a little more convoluted than that. So because my subscription ends in December, it only costs me $25 to upgrade my service to the premium tier for the duration of what I have left. And at first I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. I see the long library of games, I'm going to give it a shot. And then I dove into it. When I looked into it and I saw that PS1, PS2, and PSP for that matter, have a total of 41 games. 3 platforms, 41 games. Because of that small number of games, you have very much notable omissions. There's no Gran Turismo, there's no SOCOM, there's no Killzone from the PSP version. I'm just scratching my head here thinking, where are the games that Sony actually owns? I'm not talking about third-party games. I know you got to license those. But where are your games? You only have 41 from 3 platforms? Like, really? That's a little shitty. And then you get to the PS3. Now, the PS3 had something like 300 games on the PlayStation 3. Great. Except all those games have to be streamed. Which, as it turns out, because you're streaming them, the PlayStation 5 can't record those footage for those games natively, which I found out during my testing. But when I played the PS3, you have to stream them, which I already knew about, but I'm thinking to myself, if you don't have a good internet connection, that part of the service is useless, because I have a good internet, and my brother was in the other room playing Xbox online, and I didn't have any latency. I played Street Fighter 3. I played Split Second. I also played Resistance 3, Star Wars Force Unleashed, and I didn't experience any latency. So I'm like, yeah, the PS3 portion works really well if you have a good internet connection. Which brings us back to the premium service. If you are going into the premium service, that service is irrelevant currently for the PS1, PS2, PSP games. Unless there's something specific, which as you can see on screen, I'm playing Star Wars Bounty Hunter. If there's nothing specific that's there that you want to play, that is already irrelevant. If you don't have a solid, consistent internet connection, you can't enjoy the PS3 games because you can't even download them. So right away, on the surface, on the cover, the PS Premium looks like a good deal, but then when you go through the book, you realize, well, it's kind of not a good deal unless you fit into a specific category. someone like me who has a good connection, who has been through the entire PlayStation ecosystem, who either wants to play something that I've missed out on or decides to replay something that I played in the past. But for those old games, it doesn't mean anything. But what about the PS4 games? Well, the PS4 games are great. There's a large library, a lot of notable games that you would expect to be there are there. Added bonus, you don't need the PS Premium to use it. If you go with the middle tier, the PS Extra tier, you get all those PS4 games. So, right after I went through it, and you can see I'm playing Infamous, I played a little bit of Mafia, played some Wipeout Collection, it becomes obviously clear that the PS Extra tier is a great service. But again, it only really applies to people like me who may have missed out on games or want to revisit games, or if you skipped the PS4 specifically, or you're just new to Sony's ecosystem from the get-go. Like, the value of this service is very specific. If you are new to the ecosystem, or you skipped out on the PS4 specifically, that's where it has value. The PlayStation 3 only applies if you have a good enough internet connection to support it. If you don't, even though you want to play those PS3 games, you're better off just going and finding a used PS3 somewhere and buying your copies, because guess what? You don't have a strong internet connection, it's going to greatly hinder your experience. And then the other three platforms, well, their library is so lackluster that there's just no point. This is supposed to compete with Game Pass, but in my opinion, it's not even close. As I stated at the beginning of the video, on the surface, it sounds like a better deal. And that's the cover of the book. But once you read the book, you realize, no, it's not even close. Like, don't get me wrong, Game Pass has similar issues in that if you've been part of the Xbox ecosystem, then you've probably played all the games you wanted to play, but you still have that ace in the hole. That, well, day one games come. The only time Game Pass can be deemed something of not really valuable or not really good is in a year like 2022, where Microsoft hasn't released a single first-party title, and there's a lackluster of AAA day one games. Yes, indie games are important. Some of the best games around are indie games. Hades, It Takes Two, there's Bloodstained, Hollow Knight. There's a lot of great indie games. But let's not kid ourselves. Those don't move the needle. You're not going to get from 25 million to 30 million subscribers with indie games. You need AAA heavy hitters. It's a necessary evil in order to grow the service. On PlayStation's end, to call it a competitor is wrong. To say that it's a good service for the specific person, it is. But a competitor, no. I think for Sony, if they seriously want to compete with Game Pass, you got to do day one games, bud. I'm sorry, that's the only way. Otherwise, PS Premium will always be an afterthought. Would I subscribe for next year after this term ends? No, I think I would downgrade back down to the standard because I've been part of the ecosystem from the beginning and I've played most of the games. Unless they decide to be bold and I see Time Splitters ending up on the PS2 category, nah, I'd probably go back. So in my opinion, the PlayStation Premium service is a good service for a very specific few, but because that's not the masses, it can't be considered a Game Pass competitor. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.